Greetings and welcome to our panel on navigating legal complexity in the insurance sector. In an industry that thrives on managing risk, the legal and compliance dimensions have become more complex and more critical than ever. Today, we are privileged to be joined by three outstanding professionals who will share their insights on how insurance players not only keep up with regulation, but stay ahead through ethics and innovation. I would like to take this time and ask my panel to introduce themselves, beginning from my extreme left.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Letibuhle Ncube, and I'm the head of legal and compliance here at Maksure.
Morning, everyone. My name is Cebile Maksure, and I'm the Junior Compliance Officer here at Maksure.
Hi, colleagues. My name is Nat Maure. I'm the Chief Operating Officer for Maksure Solutions.
So let's dive right into it. Let me begin with you, Letu. What have been the most significant regulatory changes in the insurance and financial sector in South Africa, say, over the past 2 to 3 years?
I think the last 2 to 3 years have been very interesting. In 2022, we saw the commencement of the Protection of Personal Information Act, which is a data protection regulation for public and private bodies. It basically regulates how these bodies process personal information from when they collect it, how they store it, how they record it, record keeping, and also how they delete or de-identify that information. Another key change is the fact that, we were grey-listed by the Financial Action Task Force in 2023. And the result of that is that a lot of our internal regulations when it comes to money laundering have had to change. So we've seen regulators introducing things like screening of employees. I know now that we have to do beneficial ownership with the CIPC. Mm-hmm. The risk-based monitoring is very rigorous, and we've seen that we've also had to update our policies in terms of our RMCP. Which are some of the changes that we've seen. And something else we've seen is the introduction of the COFI bill. The COFI bill is particularly interesting to us as financial service providers because it means that it's going to replace the FASE Act, which is the act that currently regulates us, right? So what COFI aims to achieve is to consolidate brokers, insurers, pension funds, collective investment schemes, and banks all into one piece of legislation to regulate our market conduct and also treating customers fairly. So that's something that the regulators are still working on, and we're hoping to see it in 2 to 3 years. So just familiarizing ourselves with that information will probably help us to stay ahead and stay prepared as it gets enacted.
Interesting. Looks like there have been a lot of regulatory changes in action. Moving on to you, Cebile. What would you say us as financial service brokers, particularly Maksure, how have we adjusted to the new regulatory expectations as a result of these changes that Letu was detailing?
Thank you for that question, Nono. As Letu has already alluded to the enactment of the FIC and anti-money laundering regulations, we've seen somewhat of a dynamic shift in the role of a broker in the past few years because the broker was seen as a paper pusher between the insurer and the insured. But over the past few years, we've seen that dynamic shift in the fact that there's now a more onerous responsibility on the broker when it comes to duty and care, as well as skill when it comes to dealing with the client. Traditionally as well, it was acceptable for the broker to use a risk report that they acquired from an insurer. But that's no longer acceptable because now there's a duty on the broker to ensure that they conduct a risk assessment on the client, get to know the client, who they are dealing with. And this is mainly for two reasons, because we have, as brokers, we have a different risk appetite as well as risk exposure as compared to the insurer. And I think another benefit of having an in-house compliance department is that we get to understand the business from the ground up. And in so doing, we can then infuse legislation into our policies. And that's not all we do. We also conduct trainings, KYC trainings for both not for just both, but for the key individual, the representatives, and the brokers to ensure they understand their role in curbing money laundering in the system.
So suffice to say, we're not just compliance practitioners, but we are also expected to exercise judgment, apply legal reasoning, and take ownership of risk. That's commendable. So moving on to you, Letu. To what extent do you see regulations aligning or diverging across borders? And perhaps talk to me about what impact that has on compliance planning.
There's definitely a lot of alignment. So if you look at, let's say, data protection regulations in Zim, in the UK, and in South Africa, you'll find a lot of similarities. If you look at money laundering regulations in those three jurisdictions, you'll find a lot of similarities. I think the divergence might be in the application, because you'll find that the way the regulator interprets the legislation in Zim might be different from how they interpret the legislation in the UK. Another divergence could be maturity. We deal with the UK. We have an office in the UK. And so what you find in the UK is that they are early legislators. So they basically create legislation earlier than emerging markets. So when you, as Maksure, that gives us a strategic advantage because now we have been exposed to that legislation early on. And so when it comes to Africa, when it comes to us in South Africa, we've already got exposure and we already know how to comply.
So in instance, I envision a process where our compliance planning is both harmonized and localized. But I'm sure as AI continues to enter our space from underwriting tools, there is something that we need to watch closely as South Africa. Let me move on to my colleague Knight. How do evolving technologies like AI challenge existing legal frameworks in the financial services industry?
It's an interesting topic when you introduce AI. Because I think over the last few years, you have seen the adoption of AI by a lot of insurance companies and brokers per se. And if you were to look at that, I do not see AI as something that is going to probably change the legal framework, but actually enhance it. Comes as a tool of enhancement because of what we are seeing. Insurance companies are adopting AI. Mainly, I think if you look at our actuarial division, they would probably attest to this because when you look at a lot of people that use a lot of data, that has got a lot of data things, AI allows them to be efficient in terms of predicting or seeing the patterns that are there. And if you look at insurance companies like Sanlam and Outsurance, they've already adopted this because they can now be able to predict behavior through AI technologies. And I think as Maksure, we are very much aware of that. Looking at our agriculture division, that probably looks at the parametric. They use a lot of these data-driven technologies to enhance. So they bring that enhancement in terms of the legal framework. And we have seen our own governing bodies like your FSCA also now adopting AIs to check the behavior of the insurance industry players. So now you think like how they can now predict your TCF breaches. So if you're not treating your customers fairly and you breach that, they are able to use AI tools to check the behavior of how you would have treated those customers. So I think for AI, it's becoming a tool and that actually helps ensure that compliance is effective, and I'm sure our compliance team will attest to that. That you know what, if you're using AI, recently there is a tool that we were being introduced to that can even detect the behavior of a client. That tool can also detect the behavior of us as brokers or even insurance people. That you can even pick the stress that is in the voice, the things that are there. So in terms of what AI can also do for insurance companies is in terms of customer care. If you are a client of Discovery Health, you can see the chatbots that can talk to you. Now you're able to talk to your clients 24/7. So whilst we come here from 8 to 5, your AI can actually continue to look after your clients. It also helps you with your claims management because you can actually do a claims process, especially the initiation until there, and go through your claims process using AI without even having to have a human, a warm body interaction in terms of that. So it is a very important thing that we are getting and adopting AI tools. And not only are we also adopting AI tools, even the regulators are also now adopting AI tools to ensure that we can also have efficiency in terms of regulatory. So we can pick up stresses, we can pick up behavior, we can pick up a lot of things through AI that helps in terms of that. So compliance can have it easier because they can actually use AI to check the behavior of the people that the reps in terms of that. So it actually helps with the compliance.
Perhaps you've already touched on it, Knight, but we are cognizant that the speed of innovation is fast outpacing the speed of regulation. And that in its instance creates several legal and compliance blind spots. So having touched on some of those, what practical steps can we take as a broker to mitigate or manage those risks?
I think as long as there's an emerging technology or emerging risk, you rightly put it also to say that sometimes the rate at which technology is running, it's probably outpacing in terms of regulation. I think we need not to take a reactive approach, but probably a proactive approach. But what approach can we take? I think we need to be cognizant of the fact that not all AI tools or not all technology advancement is good for us. And we need to be able to be robust enough to find the right tools that probably work for us as a brokerage. Whilst it is also important to be moving with time, you also need to be pragmatic enough to see, because we are dealing with a lot of risk. Because the other risk that is there is you can actually, not all AI tools have been, have been tested to bring out correct. If you look at ChatGPT when it came in, it used to give a lot of wrong answers. It is only after it has gone through the process, probably years later on, that now, because of continual use, that it has become probably effective and accurate. And if you were to use those tools back then, you were going to get a lot of wrong answers, and you would have made wrong decisions based on wrong answers that probably you'd have received from those ChatGPT. If anyone had ever used that in class and you realize that you get it wrong and you say, but I used AI. But because AI, I think they become better as they are used continually. And because we need to be to be a responsible broker, we need to ensure that once an AI tool that we feel is important, whether it's in our claims department, whether it's in our customer service or anywhere where we believe that it is, I think we need to ensure that we do not rush to implement something until it has been proven. But we also need to be very much on the outlook that we are also not lagging behind in terms of the use.
It's a continual process of refining the innovation, as you say. Maybe let me jump back to Thebile. You mentioned that we have global presence, or we have presence in different jurisdictions. What authorizes us as a broker to do business in these jurisdictions?
As you may very well know, we have offices in Zimbabwe, the United Kingdom, as well as here in South Africa. For us to be able to operate in those countries, we need to be approved in terms of licensing. And it's a rigorous process because each jurisdiction has its own requirements for licensing. And clearly, as Maksure, we make the cut.
Letu, care to chime in?
Yeah, just to elaborate on what Thebile has said, in addition to just being licensed in the UK, we're also an approved Lloyd's broker, which allows us to place a business directly into Lloyd's, which just gives us a competitive advantage as Maksure. And in addition to the licensing, we're also accredited in different jurisdictions. We have accreditation in Tanzania, we have accreditation in Uganda, and just recently we got accreditation in Zimbabwe. So what that means is that we can act as a reinsurance broker for the insurers who are in those jurisdictions, just giving us more market access.
What does it say to the dependability or reliability of the brand, the Maksure brand?
I think it's a brand that's growing. It's a brand that's not afraid to take risks, and it's a brand that's constantly pushing boundaries. So, yeah.
Maybe in closing, maybe swing it back to you, Letu. How can compliance move beyond being a cost center to a level where it is a value-adding partner to the businesses?
I think a lot of times people view compliance as a hindrance or something that's stopping them from doing what they need to do. But what we are slowly realizing is that having a good compliance posture or having a strong compliance posture is what gives us market access. We've already mentioned that we have offices in these different jurisdictions, and what has allowed us to have those offices and their accreditations in those jurisdictions is because we are licensed and we comply. So having a culture and a tone of compliance is very important. And when we are seen to be an institution that values transparency and accountability, we attract more partners that want to work with us. So for us at Maksure, compliance is not something that we are viewing as a cost. In fact, we are positioning it as a strategic partner that will give us a competitive advantage and also give us market access.
We can all agree from the robust discussions of our panelists that compliance isn't just about ticking boxes. I want to share or extend my appreciation to my panelists. Thank you so much for your engagement. Thank you to the audience for lending us your ears. It's clear that compliance is no longer just a back office obligation, but a dynamic enabler of trust, innovation, and competitive advantage. Let's continue to shape an industry where doing the right thing isn't just a mandate, but a mindset. Thank you so much.
Knight, you touched on AI and how fast developing it is. What are the regulations or compliance obligations that we need to look out for as we're using AI on our day-to-day?
If the chatbot uses and say to the client that you can report your claim after 3 months, it's fine. And then later on, it is then found out that that claim is repudiated based on the time frame that the AI is used. Then so you always need to look out for those kind of things to say, is AI enabling me to send the correct information to the client? So that the AI must then not use itself, because I think they use algorithms. What is that? Algorithms, right? So if they pick up the wrong algorithm, then they send the wrong thing. So you should not be entirely 100% entirely dependent on AI. You must be able to look out and say, AI has helped me here, but I should be ultimate. I should give the ultimate advice and look at it. It's like you're in accounting, right? Mm-hmm. You still need sign-offs of the finance because somebody has to go through and say, this was done. It has to be correct. So you really need to still actually look and say, AI is helping me in terms of this, and then look at it. So you still need to have that human eye, because unfortunately we are acting as an advisor, and then whatever we advise is then deemed to have been a proper advice, and that advice must be sound enough that the person can then not say it was wrong advice, and then you still have now to pay for it.
The US has pieces of legislation, but it doesn't have a codified AI policy. And then I think there's Canada also implementing one. South Africa is still in the discussions to create a policy, but so far we don't have anything that's regulated.
With regards to AI, yes, we all love it. It makes our lives easier, but there's a problem when it comes to the monitoring of AI and jurisdiction as well. When something is posted, or what country is then going to take responsibility for that thing, or which broker is going to acknowledge that they were wrong, or is it the AI tool, or is it the broker who was wrong in that instance? So yes, we can allude to the many benefits of AI, but we also need to be very careful in its usage.